The rain hammered down on Highway 89 like a relentless assault, turning the dusty shoulder into a muddy quagmire. It was an unexpected summer downpour near Flagstaff, Arizona, the kind that caught drivers off guard and transformed the arid landscape into a slick hazard. Claire Devlin gripped the steering wheel of her luxury SUV, her knuckles white as the vehicle lurched to a stop. The tire had blown out with a sharp pop, sending the car tilting dangerously on the edge of the road just beside an overgrown path leading to an abandoned ranch. She cursed under her breath, her red dress clinging uncomfortably to her skin as she stepped out into the storm, high heels sinking into the muck. At 30, Claire was the vice president of finance at Devlin & Company, a powerhouse firm in New York. Her life was a meticulously curated empire of boardrooms, high-stakes deals, and designer wardrobes. Men orbited her like satellites drawn by her sharp wit, her platinum blonde waves, and the aura of untouchable success. But here, alone, on this desolate stretch of road, she felt exposed. She fumbled for her phone dialing roadside assistance only to hear the dispatcher estimate a 45-minute wait. The rain soaked through her light makeup, her red lips smearing slightly as she wiped water from her eyes. She tried to open the trunk for the spare tire, but her manicured nails slipped on the latch, frustration mounting. That's when the headlights pierced the gloom. A battered pickup truck pulled over its engine, rumbling to a halt. The door creaked open, and a man stepped out unfazed by the torrent. He was in his mid-30s, broad-shouldered, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and a white shirt already darkening with rain. His name was Jack Harlan, though she didn't know that yet. Jack lived on a rundown ranch up the hill, a place he'd inherited and stubbornly held on to after his wife's fatal car accident 3 years ago. He scraped by fixing farm equipment for locals, raising his 2 kids, Ava 6, with her infectious laugh, and Ben 8, who helped with chores in a world far removed from Claire's polished existence. He approached without hesitation, his work boots squelching in the mud. "Looks like you've got a flat," he said, simply, his voice steady over the rain's roar. Claire stepped back, her arms crossed protectively. "I've called for help. You don't have to. Don't touch it. You'll get dirty." Jack knelt anyway, one knee in the grime, his hands already working to loosen the lug nuts. Mud splattered his pants oil from the wheel, mixing with the rain on his skin. He didn't flinch. Roadside will take forever in this weather. This curve's dangerous. Someone could skid right into it if we leave it like this. His focus was laser-sharp tools from his truck clinking as he jacked up the SUV. Claire watched, stunned. No one had ever helped her without an agenda. Men usually complimented her dress, her car, or slipped in questions about her status. But Jack didn't glance at her cleavage, didn't ask about the expensive vehicle, or if it was a gift from a husband. He just worked his muscles, straining under the wet shirt, sweat mingling with rain. She shifted uncomfortably, her heels sinking deeper. "Really, I can wait. You don't know me." He didn't look up. "Doesn't matter. It's the right thing." Minutes stretched like hours, the rain unrelenting, but he methodically swapped the tire, tightening the final bolt with a grunt. Standing, he wiped his hands on his jeans, leaving streaks of grime. "All set. Check your tread next time. Don't let it wear down like that. Name's Jack, by the way. If it acts up again and you're nearby, my place is up that hill." He pointed to a faint dirt path winding toward a distant wooden house half hidden by wild trees. Claire blinked, water dripping from her lashes. "Thank you. I wait. How much do I owe you?" He shook his head, already heading back to his truck. "Nothing. Drive safe." The engine roared to life and he was gone, taillights fading into the storm. She stood there drenched and disoriented. For the first time in her life, someone had helped without expecting anything. No number, no favor, no strings. Her world of calculated transactions felt hollow. Glancing at the hill he'd indicated, she whispered to herself, "Who lives like that in this day and age?" But curiosity gnawed at her. Instead of continuing toward the city, she turned the SUV around, following the muddy path up the hill, drawn by an inexplicable pull toward the stranger who had vanished as quietly as he'd appeared. Claire hadn't planned to follow the dirt path up the hill. Her SUV idled at the base wipers, slashing rhythmically against the lingering drizzle. The storm had eased into a misty haze, but the air still carried the earthy scent of wet soil and pine. She stared at the faint trail Jack had pointed out, her hands gripping the wheel. Logic screamed at her to drive onto the interstate, back to the city lights and conference calls. But something deeper, An unfamiliar curiosity won out. She killed the engine and stepped out, her heels unsteady on the gravel. Instead of marching straight to the house, she veered off the path, slipping behind a cluster of overgrown bushes and scraggly trees. From there, hidden in the shadows, she could see without being seen. The ranch came into view like a faded postcard, a weathered wooden house with a sagging porch, smoke curling lazily from a stone chimney. Chickens pecked at the yard, and an old tractor sat rusting under a tarp. Jack was there, bent over a machine in the open barn, his shirt sleeves rolled up, tools scattered around him. He wiped sweat from his brow at the back of his hand, focused and unhurried. Then a burst of laughter drew her eyes. A little girl no more than 6, with messy brown braids, darted across the yard chasing a butterfly. Ava thought Claire didn't know her name yet. Behind her, an older boy, maybe 8, carried a bucket of water from a pump, his face serious but kind. Ben. They called out to Jack, and he straightened, ruffling the girl's hair with a gentle smile that transformed his rugged features. Claire's breath caught. This wasn't the stoic stranger from the roadside. Here he was, a father, his movements protective, his voice soft as he instructed the boy on how to steady the bucket. She watched for what felt like hours, the mist dampening her dress further, but she couldn't tear herself away. Jack's life was simple, raw, nothing like her world of penthouse views and quarterly reports. Flashbacks flickered in her mind. Jack's wife Emily had died in a crash on a similar rainy night, leaving him to piece together a life for their kids on this isolated patch of land. He refused to sell, clinging to the memories embedded in every creaky floorboard. Claire felt a pang she couldn't name, envy, perhaps, for the authenticity she lacked. She slipped away before dusk, heart pounding, vowing it was a one-time impulse. But 2 days later she was back. This time she dressed down a plain white blouse, jeans, and flats she'd dug from her suitcase. In her hand, a paper bag from a local bakery filled with fresh muffins. She parked at the hill's base again, walking up the path with feigned confidence. Knocking on the door felt absurd. What was she doing? But when Jack answered, wiping grease from his hands, his surprise was mild. "Car trouble again?" She shook her head, holding out the bag. "No. I just wanted to say thank you properly. For the tire." He eyed her for a moment, then stepped aside. "Come in. Kids'll love those." The interior was cozy, worn, faded rugs, a wood-burning stove drawings pinned to the fridge. Ava peeked from the hallway, eyes wide. "Are those muffins?" Claire smiled, kneeling to her level. "Blueberry. Want one?" The girl nodded eagerly, and Jack allowed it, pouring Claire a cup of coffee without asking. They sat at the kitchen table, the aroma of baked goods mingling with the faint smell of hay from outside. "You've lived here long?" Claire asked, sipping carefully. "Near 10 years, Jack replied, concise. "Alone with the kids?" "Yeah." No elaboration, no sob story. Claire filled the silence, crafting a half-truth. "I do freelance work, consulting mostly. The city's suffocating sometimes, so I drive out here to clear my head." She omitted the board meetings, the family fortune, the Devlin name that opened every door. Jack nodded, unprobing his eyes on his mug. Over the next weeks, her visits became routine. She'd bring milk one day, cookies the next, always finding excuses to linger. She sat on the porch swing, watching Jack tinker with an old engine, his hands deft and scarred. She noticed the small things, how he always served the kids first at dinner, how he mended their clothes with uneven stitches, how he never complained about the endless chores. One afternoon, as rain threatened again, she asked, "Don't you get tired? Doing everything alone like this?" He paused, wiping his forehead. "Tired, sure. But if I quit, what do the kids learn?" His words landed like a quiet truth, stirring something in her, a reminder of her own relentless drive, but without the warmth he had. As evenings grew longer, their talks deepened, though Jack remained guarded. One golden hour dusk, they sat on the steps, the kids playing in the fading light. Claire turned to him, voice soft. "You're different from anyone I've met." He glanced sidelong. "Because I'm poor." She shook her head. "Because you're real." Silence stretched, but for the first time the corner of his mouth lifted in a faint smile. Driving away that night, Claire sat in her SUV at the hill's base staring at the dashboard. "What am I doing?" she whispered. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. She cared about the ranch, the kids, him. But the weight of her unspoken truth pressed heavier, a secret that could shatter this fragile connection. 3 days passed in a blur for Jack, the ranch's routine grinding on without interruption. The kids' laughter echoed in the yard, Ben helping with the fences, Ava drawing chalk animals on the porch. But something felt off, a quiet absence that gnawed at him. Claire hadn't returned since their last talk on the steps. He told himself it was for the best. Life was simpler without complications. Yet as he cleared out a cluttered kitchen drawer one evening, his fingers brushed against a folded newspaper clipping yellowed from age. It was nothing special, just an old article about local land developments, but the name caught his eye: Devlin and Company. Curiosity flickered unbidden. He remembered Ava calling out Claire from the truck, once her full name slipping in a childish ramble. Sitting at the table under the dim bulb, Jack pulled out his battered phone, the screen cracked from a drop months ago. He typed Claire Devlin into the search bar, half expecting nothing. Results flooded in. Claire Devlin, Vice President of Finance at Devlin and Company. Articles detailed her role in multi-million-dollar deals, her status as granddaughter of real estate tycoon George Devlin. Photos showed her at galas, poised in elegant gowns, diamond earrings catching the flash. The same sharp features, the same blonde waves, but transformed, untouchable. Jack stared, the phone heavy in his hand. He powered it off, the room suddenly colder. Betrayal simmered, not from her wealth, but from the omission. Why hide? What did she think of him, a simple fool? The next morning, Claire's SUV crunched up the gravel path. She stepped out in jeans and a light sweater, carrying a thermos of coffee as usual. Jack was in the barn tightening bolts on the mower, but he heard her approach. He didn't look up, keeping his hands busy. "Morning," she said, her voice tentative. He nodded, wiping grease on a rag. "Brought some fresh brew." She set it on a workbench. Usually he'd thank her, ask about her drive. Today he muttered, "Thanks," and turned back to the machine. Claire lingered, shifting her weight. "You okay? Seem quiet." "Just a lot to do." His tone was flat, eyes fixed on the engine. Hurt flashed in her expression, but she forced a smile. "Right, I'll head out then." She waited a beat, hoping for more, but he said nothing. As her car faded down the hill, Jack exhaled, the wrench clanging louder than necessary. That evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the fields, Claire returned. She parked at the base and walked up, the wind whipping her hair. Standing in the yard, she looked small against the vast sky. Jack emerged from the house, crossing his arms on the porch. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice low but direct. She froze, the color draining from her face. "Tell you what?" "About who you are. The job, the family name." "I found out." Her shoulders slumped, the wind tugging at her sweater. "I was scared that you'd pull away, like you're doing now." He stepped down, the gravel crunching under his boots. "It's not the money. It's that you didn't trust me enough to be honest." Claire's eyes welled up, but she held his gaze. "Every man I've known sees the name first, the connections, the status. They change. I wanted you to see me, just me, without all that." Her voice cracked. "For once, I wanted to feel normal." Jack's jaw tightened. Memories of his own past surfacing, lies from old friends, the crash that took Emily, built on unspoken truths. He didn't respond immediately. The silence heavy. Claire turned away, tears spilling, as she headed toward her car. "I should go." Her steps quickened, the wind carrying her quiet sobs, but a small hand tugged at her sleeve. Ava stood there, wide-eyed in her pajamas, having slipped out unnoticed. "Where are you going?" the girl asked, her voice innocent. Claire knelt, wiping her eyes. "Just away for a bit, sweetie?" Ava tilted her head. "But when stuff breaks like Daddy's machines, we fix it. We don't throw it away." The words hung simple and profound. Claire pulled the child into a hug, her body shaking with silent cries, the warmth of Ava's arms a stark contrast to the cooling air. Jack watched from the porch, his expression softening slightly. Claire stood, meeting his eyes again. "I grew up around silence," he said finally, "but I know what hurt looks like." She swallowed. "Do I still have a chance?" He didn't answer directly, turning back toward the house, but as he went inside, he left the door ajar, a sliver of warm light spilling out just enough for someone to step through if they chose. Claire lingered in the yard, the wind whispering doubts torn between fear and the ache of what might be lost. The distance between them wasn't born of anger, but of unspoken fears, and now it stretched like a chasm waiting to see if bridges could be built. 3 days dragged on like an eternity at the ranch, the familiar rhythms of chores and children's voices failing to fill the void. Jack threw himself into work, mending a leaky roof one morning, tuning the tractor the next, but his mind wandered. Claire's absence was a silent echo. No car crunching up the path, no casual thermos of coffee on the workbench. He told himself it was better this way. Trust broken? Once was hard to mend. Ava asked about her once her small brow furrowed. "Where's the nice lady with the muffins?" Jack shrugged it off. "Busy, I guess." But inside, the quiet gnawed at him, a restlessness he hadn't felt since Emily's passing. On the third evening, as twilight painted the hills in soft purples, Jack rummaged through the kitchen drawer for a spare key. His fingers brushed fabric, a handkerchief embroidered with CD in elegant script. Unfolding it revealed a note, her handwriting neat, but hurried. "I lied, but not to deceive you. Just... I've never been seen as an ordinary woman before, and for the first time I wanted to know what that felt like." He read it twice, the words sinking in like stones in still water. Regret twisted in his chest, not anger now, but a hollow ache. He pocketed the note, stepping out to the porch where the air carried the faint scent of impending rain. The next morning broke clear, the sun glinting off dew-kissed grass. Jack was feeding the chickens when a sleek black sedan pulled up, the drive dust swirling in its wake. A man in his 60s emerged, dressed in a crisp shirt and slacks, his silver hair neatly combed. He carried himself with quiet authority, but his eyes held a weariness Jack recognized. "You must be Jack," the man said, extending a hand. "Thomas Devlin." Jack shook it warily, wiping feed dust from his palm. "Claire's father," Thomas nodded, pulling out a phone and opening a message thread. "She sent this last night." The screen showed Claire's words. "I don't know what I'm doing, Dad. I lied to the kindest man I've ever met. He fixed my tire in the rain without even looking at my face or asking who I was." Thomas pocketed the phone, his gaze steady. "She's not back in New York. She's at my place in Flagstaff, holed up skipping meetings, won't see anyone, not even her mother. I don't know the full story between you two, but I've seen that look in her eyes before. The one a woman gets when she's fallen for someone but fears she's ruined it." Jack leaned against the porch rail, the wood creaking under his weight. "Why tell me?" Thomas sighed, glancing at the ranch. "Because she deserves better than hiding. And from what she's said, you might be the one who can pull her out of it." Jack didn't respond immediately. He sent the kids to the neighbors that afternoon. Mrs. Ellis, who baked pies and never asked questions, then climbed into his truck. The drive to Flagstaff took 2 hours, winding through pine-dotted hills and sun-baked valleys. His mind raced the note, her tears in the yard, the way she'd looked at him like he was something real in her polished world. He pulled up to a modest but well-kept house on the outskirts, surrounded by a manicured garden bursting with desert blooms. There she was in the yard, watering plants with a hose. No makeup, hair tied back, wearing an oversized shirt and shorts. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, her movements mechanical. She froze when she saw him, the hose slipping from her grip, water pooling at her feet. "Jack," her voice was a whisper laced with disbelief. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets. "How long were you planning to hide?" She turned off the water, her shoulders trembling. "Until you forgot about me." He pulled out the handkerchief, holding it out. "I found this. The scariest part isn't the lie, it's why you felt you had to." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as she took it. "Everyone sees the name, the money. They change, become calculating or resentful. I wanted you to see me without that filter. But I screwed it up." Jack stepped closer, the garden's floral scent mingling with the dry earth. "I get it. Grew up poor, married someone who hid her pain until it broke us. But hiding, it just builds walls." Claire's voice broke. I've been hurt before men who wanted the connections, not me. With you it felt different. Real. He reached out his calloused hand, brushing her arm. She leaned into him and he pulled her close, her sobs muffled against his chest. The embrace was tentative at first, then firm, the weight of unspoken fears lifting slightly in the shared silence. Pulling back, she looked up. I'm sorry, I won't hide anymore. Jack nodded, his thumb wiping a tear from her cheek. And I promise if we mess up, we'll fix it together. No running. They stood there in the garden, the sun warming their skin as the tension eased into something tentative, but hopeful. No grand declarations, just two people choosing to face the truth side by side without witnesses or fanfare. A week later, Claire returned to the ranch with Jack, the drive back from Flagstaff passing in comfortable silence. She carried only a small suitcase, leaving behind the trappings of her New York life. The house welcomed her like an old friend. The creak of the porch steps the faint aroma of wood smoke from the stove. For the first time, she stepped inside not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged. She rolled up her sleeves in the kitchen, washing dishes from breakfast, while Ava chattered about her drawings. Later, she mixed batter for muffins, the oven's warmth filling the room as Ben helped measure flour. Jack watched from the doorway, a quiet smile playing on his lips. No declarations were needed. Her actions spoke volumes. She was choosing this life unadorned and real. Claire didn't flaunt her resources. Instead, she channeled them, subtly sketching plans on scrap paper for a community garden in the unused field behind the barn. She painted a wooden sign by hand, Devlin's Second Chance Garden. It became a haven where local kids learned to plant seeds, tend chickens, and keep simple journals about their feelings. Neighbors trickled in, at first curious about the city woman who'd appeared on Jack's hill. Claire taught with patience, her hands in the soil alongside theirs. Jack joined when he could, his tools fixing trellises while she explained crop rotation. He never probed about contracts or bank accounts. She never boasted. Their evenings ended with clasped hands on the porch, the stars overhead a silent witness to their growing ease. In those moments, the ranch felt fuller, the simplicity a balm against past complexities. 6 months slipped by in the rhythm of seasons, the garden blooming with vegetables, the kids growing taller. One crisp autumn afternoon, they held a small wedding in the backyard. No grand venue, just a handful of neighbors gathered under a canopy of turning leaves. Wildflowers dotted the grass, tied in bunches by Ava and Ben, who served as flower girl and ring bearer in their Sunday best. Jack stood in a clean white shirt, no tie, his boots polished for once. Claire wore a simple sundress. She'd sewn herself the fabric soft against her skin. As they exchanged vows before a local pastor, her voice steady despite the emotion, she said, "You taught me to live truthfully. I promise to never hide again. Not from you, not from myself." Jack took her hands, his grip firm. "I don't promise perfection, but if we falter, I'll stay and fix it with you. No more running." The ceremony was brief laughter rippling through as Ava scattered petals with abandon. Neighbors clapped, sharing pie and stories around a picnic table. As night fell, the group dispersed, leaving Jack and Claire by a small fire pit in the yard, embers glowing orange against the dark. She leaned her head on his shoulder, the crackle of flames mingling with distant crickets. "I used to think love meant knowing everything about each other," she murmured. "But now I see it's choosing to stay even when you don't understand it all." He kissed her forehead. "You don't have to be anyone else. Just you, that's enough for a lifetime." The story didn't end with castles or fortunes, but with the garden expanding, rows of greens thriving under careful hands. An old tractor still scarred, but running smooth. Two people once guarded by secrets and scars, now building a life from honesty. We don't need to start over from the beginning. Just start again from the truth. Because sometimes the deepest tears come not from betrayal, but from a love strong enough to forgive, real enough to endure, and brave enough to begin anew together.